So in this question, you're asked to find the domain of f of x is equal to log x plus 3 to the base 2 by x square plus 3x plus 2. So what is this function made up of? This function is made up of a logarithmic function and a quadratic function, and this is a rational function, something by something. So for a rational function to be defined, first, the denominator should not be equal to 0. The first condition is x square plus 3x plus 2 should not be equal to 0. This is the condition for rationality. The denominator should not be equal to 0. And quadratic wise, this is defined for all real numbers, there is no problem. And if you take the numerator, there is a logarithmic function. For logarithmic function to be defined, the argument x plus 3 has to be greater than 0. That's the condition for definition of logarithmic function. So these are the two conditions which need to be valid. So this implies x plus 1 times x plus 2 should not be equal to 0. That is, x should not be equal to 1 or 2. It should not be equal to 1 or 2. And the second condition says that x is greater than minus 3. So these are the two conditions which needs to be valid. So if you draw the real number line, so minus 3 is somewhere here. So x has to be greater than minus 3. But x should not be equal to 1 or 2. These are open dots. So what is the domain of this function? The domain is open minus 3 to infinity except the numbers 1 or 2. So this will be the domain of this function. So next, the next question is f of x is equal to 2 minus of mod of x minus 5. What is the domain and range of this function? So as you can very clearly see, this function is made up of a mod function. Mod function. But mod function is defined for every real x, because the domain of mod function is all real numbers. So the domain of this function will be all real numbers, because x minus 5 is defined for all real numbers and mod of x minus 5 is also defined for all real numbers. There is no problem for any number. So if you go to the range of this function, so how do we calculate this? Let us go step by step. Mod of x minus 5 is always greater than or equal to 0, right? Mod of x minus 5 is always greater than or equal to 0. So minus of mod of x minus 5 is always less than or equal to 0. And if you add 2 on both sides, 2 minus of mod of x minus 5 is always less than or equal to 2. That means the value of y will always be less than or equal to 2. So if the value of y is always less than or equal to 2, what is the meaning of this? The range is nothing but minus infinity to closed 2. So this is the range of this function. So the next question is f of x is equal to x minus 2 by 2 minus x. Find the range of this function. As you can see, this is a very straightforward function. You have x minus 2 in the numerator and 2 minus x in the denominator. So first, before finding the range, let me find the domain of this function. So what is the domain of this? This is a rational function. And for a rational function to be defined, the denominator cannot be equal to 0. It is 2 minus x should not be equal to 0. This implies x should not be equal to 2. This implies the domain is nothing but all real numbers except the number 2. So this is the domain of this function. And what is the range of this function? So as long as x is not equal to 2, as long as x is not equal to 2, x minus 2 and 2 minus x, x minus 2 by 2 minus x can be written as minus of x minus 2, and as long as our x is not equal to 2, these two can be cancelled out and the answer will always be equal to minus 1. That means the range of this function is always a singleton set minus 1. So this will be the range of this function. So next, let us go for the 10th question. F of x is equal to x plus 2 by x minus 3. What is the range of this function? The meaning of range is nothing but, so if you take y is equal to x plus 2 by x minus 3, Range is nothing but the possible values of y. What are the possible values of y? That's the question. So can y take every real number, or some real numbers are not possible? That's what you need to find. So this is a specific type of question, very interesting question. This is the type linear by linear function. Rational type linear by linear. So we have already seen in the previous questions y of the type quadratic by quadratic, where we have only found the domain, we have not found the range, right? So first let us find the range for linear by linear. This is a very specific type of question. So how we do this? First, what is the domain of this? The domain is all real numbers except 3, right? Because x minus 3 is in the denominator, x cannot be equal to 3. That's the domain. Now, what is the range? How do you find the range? So if you want to find the range, we first try to write x in terms of y. That is, if you do the cross multiplication, xy minus 3y is equal to x plus 2. xy minus x is equal to 3y plus 2. X times y minus 1 is equal to 3y plus 2. So x is equal to 3y plus 2 by y minus 1. So as long as y is any number except 1, we can always find the corresponding x. That means corresponding to y is equal to 1, there is no x possible. Apart from y is equal to 1, for all values of y, some or the other x will always come. So what are the values of y which are possible? Y cannot be equal to 1. That means the value of this expression cannot be equal to 1. Hence the range of this function is all real numbers except 1. So I hope you have understood how to find the range of the type linear by linear. So first you find the value of x in terms of y, and the logic is that the denominator of this function cannot be equal to 0. That's how you find the range of this function. Thank you.